So here we're looking at Kant's moral philosophy, and the heart and soul of Kant's moral philosophy is the categorical imperatives. To understand these two versions of the categorical imperative, you have to understand what the term means, categorical imperative, and those are two words. Let's start with the easier one, which is the second, imperative. An imperative is simply an order or command. So an imperative is actually a grammatical mood, which tells us that the sentence is giving an order. Do this, don't do that, whatever the content may be. So an imperative is an order or a command. It's telling somebody to do something. So what does it mean for an imperative to be categorical? To be categorical is not to be conditional. A conditional, or what Kant calls a hypothetical imperative, would have an if. If you want this, then do that. So a conditional or hypothetical imperative would be, well, do it. If you want this, then you should do that. Whereas a categorical imperative states categorically, just do this, don't do that. So a categorical imperative would be one without any sort of conditions or exceptions. So it would be an imperative that we always, in all circumstances, no matter what, without exceptions, needed to follow. And that's what the categorical imperatives are. Here we have two. There's actually three, but it's the first two that matter most, I think. And the first one here, and the categorical imperatives themselves are in bold. Uh, Canst thou also will that thy maxim should be a universal law? If not, then it must be rejected. And that's about it. That's actually really the whole thing. Canst thou, can you, will that your maxim, and the maxim is the rule that you're following, can your rule be a universal law? If it can't, then you know that it's unethical and you can't do it morally. So let's think about it. I'm thinking of doing anything. Thinking of, I don't know. I'm hungry. I have no money and I need food, and I'm thinking of stealing it from a grocery store to eat. And I'm thinking of doing this. I'm thinking, what would my maxim be? Generally, what would the general rule of action be that I would be following if I were to, in these circumstances, to steal something to eat? It would be something like this. If you are terribly hungry and you have no other recourse to get food except from stealing it, then steal it. That would be my rule. And then I ask myself whether it can be a universal law, which essentially means, can I will that this be a rule that everyone follows? That if you are terribly hungry and you have no other way of getting food, go ahead and steal. If I find that I can will that, then it's okay to do. If I find that I can't, then I know that it's not okay to do. So what is Kant saying here? What he's offering us a certain criterion for judging whether our actions are ethically good or not. If we can will that the action generalized in the form of a rule be a law for everyone, that everyone should follow it, then we know that it's okay to do. If we know that we can't will it, then we know that it's not ethically okay to do. The notion is that built into our sense of what morality is the notion that whatever I do, it must be lawful. And lawful means it's a rule that everyone should follow. And so I ask myself whether my actions can be considered to be lawful, which is essentially, again, asking whether my maxim, my rule of action, can serve as a universal law. The second categorical imperative is quite different, but is also the same sort of thing. It asks whether or not It's a question that I ask myself when I'm thinking of doing something. I ask myself a certain question, and if the answer comes out a certain way, I know it's okay to do. If the answer comes out in another way, I know that it's not okay to do. But it's a very different approach. In this section of his work, this certain book on morality that he wrote, he's asking whether anything is good in itself. Now, the things can be said to be good in different ways. Something can be said to be good and legitimately good if it meets a certain desire, that it's good relative to a certain wanting or desiring, in the way that food is good if we're hungry. Um, Reading a certain book is good if we enjoy that book. But there's another sense, in the moral sense of something being good, for Kant, is something being intrinsically good. And it's very important for Kant's moral philosophy that there be such a thing, that is, there be something which is good unconditionally, good in itself, not good relative to some standard that we may apply to it, but good intrinsically. And this first section, where he says, "Now I say man and generally any rational being exists as an end in himself," he's saying that rational beings like ourselves are that intrinsic good. That is, we are intrinsically valuable. It might make better sense to say, well, does the food, let's say the hamburger, have value? It has value if somebody values it. It means its value is merely relative value. Whereas you and I, as rational creatures, Kant says, we have intrinsic value. We are valuable not because we are valued by anyone. We may or may not be, but it doesn't matter. We are valuable in ourselves. So this means that with regard to rational creatures like ourselves, which he calls persons, there are certain limitations on how we can treat each other. He says right here, rational beings are called persons because their very nature points them out as ends in themselves, not, that is, as something which must not be used merely as means, and so far therefore restricts freedom of action and is an object of respect. So that restriction on freedom of action means that we can't treat each other, we persons, like things. To treat something like a thing is to treat it as a means to an end. To treat something like a person is to treat it as an end in itself. That's a general idea. So based upon this idea is the imperative, the rule. So act as to treat humanity, whether in thine own person or in that of any other, in every case as an end, never as means only. And that's the imperative. That is, I ask myself, no matter what I'm thinking of doing, I ask myself, well, in so doing, would I be treating a person like a thing? Which in the language of the imperative means, would I be treating a person as a means to an end rather than an end in themselves? If the answer to that is yes, then I know that it's unethical and I can't do it. If the answer is no, and I would say I am not treating a person as a mere means, as a thing to be exploited, but rather am treating them as an end in themselves, meaning with respect, then I know it's okay to do. So these are the categorical imperatives. That's a kind of a quick and dirty introduction, but I hope you get the sense of it. The first categorical imperative is often called the one having to do with universalizability. Can my maxim, my rule of action, be universalized as law for everyone? If the answer to that is yes, then I know that it's okay to do. The second one really has to do with persons. Would I be treating a person in what I'm proposing to do as a means to an end rather than an end in themselves? And that's really the criterion that one establishes.